ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Helldivers 2 video. Today we're going to be talking about the brand new update. Well, I guess it's been out for a couple days now, but Helldivers 2 has finally boosted every weapon in the game pretty much and actually listened to the community when it comes to balancing and where the fun of the game actually is, which is overpowered weapons and feeling like a total badass. This is by far one of Helldivers 2's biggest updates and probably the most anticipated one. It almost feels like a last chance for the Helldivers 2 devs for a lot of people because of the general issues with balancing in the past and how long it's been sort of not great for a lot of people. It definitely screwed over some weapons, made them unusable in certain scenarios, and the game for the longest time felt like a bit of a slog to get through certain missions, depending on what difficulty you were on and depending on what weapons you were using. And the Escalation of Freedom update was meant to be the big one that was bringing people back in, and then they had some balancing issues with that even. So this one is a big update in terms of how the community feels about it. And if I'm honest, I saw an instant spike in player counts and the general mood of the community from what I can tell, because I sort of left it for a couple days to see how people were treating the new update, how they're finding it, and also just to give myself time to actually form an opinion on it. And from what I can see, for the most part, it's very positive. I think Helldivers 2 needed this kind of balance update where it felt more like what launch felt like, where we were having lots of fun killing bugs and bots with overpowered weapons. And especially because I've been playing Space Marine 2 lately, and that, I think, gives that power fantasy that a lot of people were missing with Helldivers 2. I think this update has brought us closer back to that power fantasy we've been wanting from Helldivers. You're still a bit squishy, but I think that's the point, right? Is you're throwing Helldivers at the enemy and you are cannon fodder. Super Earth doesn't really care about how many people are lost. They more care about how many you're killing, which is why the weapons had to feel overpowered and like they were doing a lot of damage and they were killing lots of things. And I think we have reached that again, but there's still some tweaking I think that needs to be done. So let's just go over a couple of the things that were in this new update. So let's start with the big balancing stuff. Previously, partial damage dealt 50% of full damage, which we found to be overly punishing and reduced effectiveness too much, leading to an excessive reliance on high armor penetration weapons. We've now increased partial damage to 65% of full damage to address this issue. The Helldivers now take less damage from headshots, which previously dealt 100% extra damage but now inflicts only 50% extra damage. Damage from hits to other body parts has been slightly increased depending on the area hit. This adjustment aims to normalize overall damage while maintaining detailed damage zones, reducing spike damage. Now obviously, like I said before, we're meant to feel squishy, but with these two changes here, it's helped us feel more powerful with our weapons again and also feel a bit less squishy to the point where it's not as frustrating. You know, you get hit with a rocket and just explode and you wouldn't really have a chance of survival. Whereas the enjoyment, I think, from the game came from those tight situations where you did feel like the next hit could kill you, but you had a chance to like just hold out and have that last stand moment. Whereas that had sort of been reduced because of the balancing and stuff. So now we're more back to how it used to be, which is very, very good. You've got a bunch of primary weapon buffs: the Liberator, the Knight, the Liberator Concussive, the Tenderizer, the Breaker, the Spray and Pray, the Scythe, the Crossbow, the Eruptor, the Defender, the Liberator Penetrator, the Diligence, Counter Sniper, Blitzer, and Torture are all the primary weapons that got buffs or some kind of balance change to it. There's a couple like small things here, like the Eruptor has explosion damage decreased from 340 to 225, but it had a bunch of other things increased, like its explosion radius, and Shrapnel is now back, which was a big one. So a lot of these balancing changes for the primary weapons make a lot more sense, and I think are overall pretty good, pretty positive. I don't think there's anything here that's outlandish. Let me know in the comments if you think there is a primary weapon that got a balance change that you think is negative in some way. Because from what I can see and just the general feel of the game and playing it, I don't see any real issues with the balancing for the primary weapons at the moment. Next is the Sidearms. The Peacemaker, the Dagger, and the Crisper all got balance changes. Again, pretty normal. Big one obviously was the flame damage and stuff got changed back to how it was before Escalation of Freedom Freedom update, that was the big one that people had issues with. Escalation of Freedom fire damage completely just ruined flame weapons. Even I'm of that opinion that flame weapons were almost unusable after the Escalation of Freedom update, which was really dumb given that the war bond that came out roughly the same time as that update was flame based. So glad to see that they've realized, hey, we're going to revert this back to how it was, and now flame weapons are definitely way more useful, especially now that you can use them on like Bile Titans and Chargers. You can use the flamethrower and stuff like that on those enemies now, which is super useful. Support weapons, you have dedicated anti-tank weapons like the Recoilless Rifle, Quasar, Commando, Expendable Anti-Tank, Spear, and Patriot Exosuit rockets have all received significant damage boosts to enhance their effectiveness. Thank God, because these are big weapons that should feel big and powerful, so I'm glad to see that they have had a major boost. Other support weapons that got balance changes were the grenade launcher, the laser cannon, the arc thrower, the railgun, the stalwart, the machine gun, the anti-material rifle, heavy machine gun, commando, flamethrower, and the auto cannon. Once again, my little baby, the machine gun, got a stagger force increase from 15 to 20, so another buff for the machine gun. Very happy with that, because that is my go-to support weapon for the most part, especially on bugs. Another big one was the railgun. That got nerfed to all hell back in the day. It has had a major boost. Now durable damage increased from 60 to 225, and fully overcharging damage increased from 150% to 250%. That is a huge buff for the railgun, and hopefully means that a lot of people will be more happy with it, and that it will feel like a really powerful weapon again, because the railgun was a pretty solid choice towards the start of the game when it was initially coming out, and then they just nerfed it to the point where it just wasn't fun to use. It didn't feel like a railgun. So hopefully now that is the case. It now feels like a big powerful weapon again. A lot of these support weapons, like I said, got the ability to actually damage heavier enemies like Chargers, Bile Titans, Impalers, and Hulks. So things like the anti-material rifle, the heavy machine gun, the flamethrower, the autocannon, they can now damage those heavier enemies. Once again, it's just broadening that arsenal and making weapons more viable for more scenarios, and I think that's such a huge positive, because you don't want to have your loadout limited just because of a certain enemy type or whatever. You want to bring a weapon that you find the most enjoyment with, and for it to be effective. And I think we're pretty much there now. Like I said, just a few more tweaks maybe here and there, but for the most part, you can bring whatever loadout you want, and it will be probably effective for most scenarios, if not all scenarios, which is fantastic to see. Two grenades also got some balance changes, the frag grenade and the thermite grenade. These all seem pretty reasonable. Don't see any issues here with these two balance changes. And that's pretty much all the balancing for the game in terms of weapons and loadouts and stuff. Honestly, really positive. I like what I see. I think it's just going to be such a fun time right now with this new patch. And it already is from playing. I think it's motivated people to pick up the game again and play with weapons that they were previously enjoying, which were just nerfed into the ground. And like I said, those player counts did rise since this update came out. And from what I can tell, the community are pretty positive about all the weapon changes and balancing and stuff like that. So really cool to see. Really happy that Arrowhead have done this, because they've been very open and have communicated very well what they want to do and what their intentions are, especially with this update. We got constant blog posts and stuff talking about why they were making the changes, what they were changing, and it was all really well received from what I can tell. So really happy to see that. And then we've got general gameplay changes. So we have a new Galactic War feature. The Galactic War map can now display the location of strategically important assets. This will make it much easier for the Helldivers to take them into consideration when deciding on their next move. Now, as I've previously stated in my other Helldivers 2 videos, I love the strategy element of this game. I love the tactics. I love sort of community pushes when it comes to maneuvering our forces around the map. And this is just another great feature to have to make it a lot easier to make decisions on where we should attack as a community, even if you're not up to date with looking at forums and, you know, the Discord chats and where people are sort of aiming for and that general discussion that's happening about the strategy. Having these things implemented in the game itself makes it a lot easier for people to make decisions on where to attack and stuff. So really enjoy that. We've got an emote wheel feature now in the game, which is just hilarious. And they added Dolby Atmos support on PS5. Now another big one is the enemies. They got a huge balance change, a lot of sort of reduction from what I can see, as well as trying to make it meet the current weapon balancing so that enemies go down a bit easier. Those weapons feel big and powerful, like I said. And again, honestly, really dig a lot of these. The big one that jumped out to me was the rocket devastators. They now have a limited number of rockets and you can see them disappear when they are spent. They also added a reload mechanic from their backpack to replenish their rockets once, and the rocket physics collision is smaller, making them easier to avoid, because sometimes, man, those rocket devastators were actually really devastating to the point where it was quite frustrating to come up against them. So these changes for the rocket devastators especially are going to be super useful. Again, I'm just going to list the things that sort of got balanced here: the automaton fabricators, the hulks, all versions of the hulks, the hulk bruiser, the tank, the berserker, the devastators, the rocket devastators, the gunships, the chargers, the charger behemoth, the hunters, the scavengers, the bile titans, the impalers, and the impaler tentacles. They all got balance changes, a lot of things being reduced, but some little things being increased, like the tentacle damage for the impaler tentacles have been increased, but they've reduced things like the camera shake of the tentacle attack, and the tentacles require less damage inflicted on them to retract. So again, these updates are very community friendly updates. They're not sort of making the enemies ridiculous like they were previously. These are all really good changes in my opinions. Stratagems also got some pretty big balances. One that I love the most is the Eagle 500 kilo bomb. The explosion radius increased to match visuals better. Can't go wrong with a big explosion. The 500 kilo bomb is a awesome stratagem to have, and so for it to have its explosion radius increased to sort of match the visuals of it, which is again a stunning visual of an explosion, really positive to see that. The other stratagem balances that happened were the Eagle rockets, the Gatling sentry, the machine gun sentry, the Tesla tower, the heavy machine gun emplacement, Patriot exosuit, Emancipator exosuit, the orbital laser, the orbital rail cannon, and the orbital gas strike. Again, for the most part, a lot of these got balance increases in terms of damage and what they're useful against. Again, those heavier enemies like the Chargers and Bile Titans, a lot more of these are now useful against those enemies. And another interesting change to general gameplay that I saw here was the planets and modifiers. The intense heat and extreme cold modifiers are no longer static throughout the mission and may now change based on time of day or different weather conditions. Some desert planets will now only have the intense heat modifier active during the day. This means that during the night, the planet will either have no modifier or in some cases have the extreme cold modifier. Same thing for the arid planets, similar to the Hellmire planet, will now only have the intense heat modifier active during fire tornado storms. I find this one really interesting and it makes a lot of sense. It makes the choice of whether to fight at night or during the day a lot more impactful when you're making that choice. It's not sort of just a flavor choice or whatever. It actually has a gameplay impact now a little more. And it's just making the weather more dynamic, those mission choices more dynamic. So really positive change here as well. I like this one a lot. And then there were just a bunch of fixes. And then shortly after the patch came out, they hot fixed a couple things, fixed a couple more issues here and there. But for the most part, that is pretty much it for this update. It is a huge update. I encourage you to go look at the patch notes on their Discord or wherever else you can find them, because they detailed everything that they've changed here. Again, a lot of them are really positive. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of these changes, whether they're good, whether they're bad. Do you think Arrowhead still need to make tweaks, or are we at a happy sort of medium here where the game feels more like what it felt like at launch? Let me know in the comments down below. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe for more Helldivers 2 content. Become a member today if you want to support me in another way. You'll get early access to videos and live streams. And thank you so much for watching this, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!